At the far end of the classroom, Maria sat, a shadow among her peers. She had grown accustomed to the whispers that drifted around her like a constant murmur, to the sideways glances and stifled laughter. Her heart hardened, not out of anger but out of sheer necessity. The vibrant drawings in her sketchbook were her only escape, swirls of colors that let her mind wander to places far beyond the confining walls of her school. Her tormentors were always there, a small clique of girls led by Alina, whose bright smile hid cruelty beneath its surface. Alina was everything Maria was not: popular, confident, and seemingly untouchable. Day after day, Alina and her friends found new ways to make Maria feel smaller. Sometimes it was mocking her clothes, other times it was her quiet demeanor or the hand-me-down textbooks she carried. But what hurt Maria most were the words left unsaid, the isolation, the sense of being invisible to everyone else, like her very presence was a stain upon their world. "Why do you even come here?" Alina had once asked her with a smirk. "You don't belong." Maria had no answer. She never did. There were no words to fight back with. No retorts that could break through the layers of self-doubt and the weight of shame that had become her constant companions. So, she would lower her head and pretend not to hear, focusing instead on the hope that one day, all of this would be behind her. One day, the world beyond the classroom doors would open to her. The years passed slowly, but eventually, high school ended, as all things must. When Maria walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she glanced out into the sea of faces. Her parents were absent, working overtime shifts just to keep the family afloat. But Alina was there, sitting with her group, laughing and snapping pictures, completely oblivious to the journey Maria was about to begin. The years that followed were a blur of struggles and perseverance. College was a place of solitude, where Maria could rebuild herself away from the scars of her past. She worked 2 jobs to pay her tuition, spending late nights in dimly lit libraries, studying finance and dreaming of something greater. Slowly, success came to her, not in a sudden burst, but as a gradual awakening. After years of climbing the corporate ladder, she finally founded her own company, Phoenix Holdings. The name, Phoenix, wasn't chosen lightly. It symbolized everything she had endured, rising from the ashes of her youth, transforming the pain into fuel for her ambition. And now, here she was, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar firm. Her office overlooked the city skyline, the result of her relentless hard work and determination. But the shadows of the past were never too far behind. One evening, as Maria skimmed through her daily reports, an unexpected email appeared in her inbox. Her assistant had forwarded a request for a business partnership, an unfamiliar company seeking to collaborate on a lucrative new project. Maria's eyes widened as she read the name of the person spearheading the inquiry, Alina Volkov. A flood of memories rushed back, snippets of cruel laughter and whispered insults. Maria leaned back in her chair, her pulse quickening. Alina was now reaching out to her, unknowingly, perhaps unaware that her former classmate was the CEO of Phoenix Holdings. Maria's fingers hovered over the keyboard as an idea formed in her mind, one she couldn't ignore. The scars of her youth were still there, faint but ever present. It wasn't revenge she sought, not exactly. But there was something poetic in the idea of confronting those who had once belittled her, now from a position of power. She smiled faintly, her decision made. She would meet with Alina and her team. But this meeting wouldn't be like any other. No, this meeting would be something Alina and her friends would never forget. With a single stroke of the keyboard, Maria approved the invitation. The next few days unfolded with deliberate precision. Maria, ever meticulous, ensured that every detail for the meeting was planned to perfection. As she reviewed the agenda, she could not help but imagine the expressions on their faces when the realization struck them, who she had become. Her assistant, Nina, knocked lightly on the door, peeking in. "Everything's ready for tomorrow, Maria. The team from Volkov and Partners will be here at 10 a.m. sharp." Maria nodded, her gaze fixed on the city outside her office window. Thank you, Nina. Make sure to give them a warm welcome. She paused for a moment, then added, I'll handle the introductions personally. Nina hesitated, sensing something unusual in her boss's tone. Are you sure about this? You've never taken such a hands-on approach with these kinds of meetings before. Maria turned in her chair, offering a small, unreadable smile. This one is different. The night before the meeting, Maria found herself unable to sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, as memories from her school days flooded back with an unrelenting intensity. She wasn't sure what she hoped to gain from tomorrow. Closure, perhaps? Or maybe it was a sense of validation, to face the people who had once made her feel worthless, and to show them that she had transcended every insult and every moment of their cruelty. But another part of her wondered if she was seeking something more. Was there still a part of her, buried deep, that longed for some form of acknowledgement or apology? She shook her head, dismissing the thought. No, she wasn't the same fragile girl she had been all those years ago. The meeting wasn't about forgiveness or reconciliation, it was simply a business opportunity. At least, that's what she told herself. The next morning arrived quickly, and as the clock ticked toward 10, Maria felt an unfamiliar tension creeping into her normally calm demeanor. Her office was spotless, with a large mahogany table set for the meeting. A tray of coffee and pastries lay untouched on the sideboard. Everything was in place. At precisely 10, the glass doors of Phoenix Holdings swung open, and Alina Volkov stepped into the lobby, flanked by two colleagues. The years had changed her, she carried herself with a sense of authority, her features sharp and polished, but there was no mistaking the person who had once been the center of Maria's torment. As Maria watched them from behind the tinted glass of her office, she felt her pulse quicken, though her expression remained calm. Nina escorted the group into the boardroom, where Maria was waiting. Alina entered first, glancing around the opulent surroundings, clearly impressed. She did not recognize Maria at first, why would she? The girl she had bullied all those years ago had disappeared into the woman who now stood before her, poised and confident. Good morning, Maria greeted them, her voice steady. She extended her hand, and Alina shook it, still oblivious. I'm Maria Andreeva, CEO of Phoenix Holdings. Welcome. For a fleeting moment, there was a glimmer of confusion in Alina's eyes as she tried to place the name. But it wasn't until they sat down, the formalities out of the way, that the pieces began to fall into place. Maria noticed the exact second Alina realized who she was, her face paled, and she blinked rapidly as if trying to recalibrate her memory. Maria, Alina's voice faltered, the once confident tone reduced to a whisper. Is it really you? Maria gave a slow, deliberate nod. It's been a long time, hasn't it? There was a stunned silence that filled the room. Alina's colleagues, unaware of the history between the two women, exchanged puzzled glances. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Alina's expression shifted from disbelief to something like unease, perhaps even fear. She clearly hadn't expected this. Not here. Not now. Well, Maria continued, breaking the silence, her voice measured and calm. Let's get started. I understand you're here to propose a partnership. I'd love to hear more about it. Alina hesitated, glancing nervously at her colleagues before forcing a smile. Yes, of course. We believe this collaboration could be mutually beneficial. As Alina began to explain the project, her voice was noticeably less confident than it had been moments ago. She stumbled over her words, clearly rattled. Maria listened carefully, her gaze steady, unwavering. Though her face remained neutral, she couldn't deny the strange satisfaction in watching Alina struggle to maintain her composure. It was as if the power dynamic had shifted in an instant. But Maria hadn't come here just to witness Alina's discomfort. She had a plan, one that would unfold slowly, and with precision. She leaned back in her chair, her fingers lightly tapping the table, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. This meeting was only the beginning. As Alina stumbled through her presentation, the polished businesswoman facade began to crack. The same confidence she had carried into the boardroom now seemed to erode under Maria's calm, unwavering stare. Each slide, each word she uttered, felt hollow, as though the weight of the past was suffocating her composure. Maria remained silent, letting Alina twist in her own discomfort. She glanced occasionally at the colleagues flanking Alina, both of whom seemed increasingly uneasy, though they couldn't quite grasp why. They, of course, hadn't lived through the years of casual cruelty that Maria had endured. To them, this was simply another business proposal. But Maria could see it in Alina's eyes. She was spiraling, the veneer of control slipping as old memories flooded back. After several minutes of Alina's shaky presentation, Maria raised a hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. The sudden gesture made Alina flinch. "Let me stop you there," Maria said, her voice sharp but still polite. "The numbers you've presented are solid, but I'm not convinced this partnership is the right fit for Phoenix Holdings at this time." Alina blinked, stunned. "But, we've done extensive market research," she stammered, her voice cracking. "This merger could be incredibly profitable for both our companies. If you just..." Maria cut her off again, this time with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm aware of the financials, Alina. But I'm not interested in just the numbers. Partnerships are built on trust, mutual respect, things that can't be quantified." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Alina's face drained of color, and Maria could almost hear the gears turning in her mind. For the first time in years, Alina was being forced to look directly at the person she had once dismissed, and the realization seemed to shake her to the core. There was an unbearable pause before Alina finally spoke, her voice strained. "Maria, if this is about the past, isn't it always?" Maria interrupted, her tone deceptively calm. She folded her hands neatly on the table, leaning forward slightly. "You see, the past has a way of catching up with us, doesn't it? I often wonder about the choices people make, whether they ever stop to consider the consequences down the line." She paused, watching the ripple of understanding pass over Alina's face. "It's funny how things come full circle." Alina was visibly shaken now, struggling to maintain her composure. Her colleagues exchanged anxious glances, clearly unsure how to navigate the sudden shift in tone. They had come here expecting a routine business meeting, but it was quickly becoming something far more personal. "I didn't," Alina began, her voice faltering. "I didn't realize. I mean, we were kids, Maria. I didn't think." "You didn't think," Maria repeated, her voice soft but edged with steel. "No, I suppose you didn't." The silence in the room was deafening. Alina's colleagues shifted uncomfortably, clearly out of their depth, but Maria kept her focus solely on Alina. There was a strange satisfaction in watching her squirm, but it wasn't as sweet as Maria had once imagined it would be. The woman sitting across from her was no longer the queen of the schoolyard, untouchable and cruel. She was just human. Flawed, fragile, and exposed. Maria took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her own emotions tugging at her. She had envisioned this moment so many times over the years, the perfect revenge, the perfect confrontation. But now that it was here, it didn't feel triumphant. It felt empty, hollow, as though the years had blurred the lines between victim and victor. "We're not children anymore, Alina," Maria said finally, her voice softer now. "We've both changed. But the things we do to others, those things leave marks. They don't just fade because time passes." Alina looked down at her hands, trembling slightly. For the first time in the meeting, she was speechless. The power dynamic had shifted so completely that it was almost painful to watch. But then, just as Maria was about to end the meeting, something unexpected happened. One of Alina's colleagues, a man named Victor who had remained silent throughout the presentation, leaned forward, speaking for the first time. "Ms. Andreeva," he began, his voice steady and direct. "I think it's clear there's a history here, one that none of us were aware of. But from what I've seen today, Phoenix Holdings and Volkov and Partners could still create something remarkable together. The past is, well, it's the past. But we're here now, and the opportunity before us is too great to ignore. Perhaps we could find a way forward that benefits everyone. Maria was taken aback by his boldness. There was something in his tone, a quiet respect, an acknowledgement of the pain that had been revealed in the room. But there was also something pragmatic about his words. He wasn't dismissing the past, but he wasn't letting it define the future either. For a long moment, Maria sat in silence, her mind racing. The twists and turns of the morning had left her feeling off balance, unsure of how to proceed. She had expected to leave this meeting with a sense of closure, perhaps even justice. But now, she found herself at a crossroads. Could she really let the past go? Could she work alongside the people who had once caused her so much pain? And if she did, what would that mean for her own sense of self? Finally, she spoke, her voice measured. I'll need time to think this over. We'll reconvene tomorrow. The meeting wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. The following day dawned with an unusual clarity. Maria awoke early, the sun spilling golden light through her window, illuminating the walls of her apartment that had felt so shadowed and heavy just days before. As she sipped her coffee, her mind drifted back to the meeting, specifically, to Victor's unexpected interjection. His words had ignited a flicker of possibility in her heart, a notion that perhaps reconciliation was not an impossible dream after all. But could she truly set aside the memories of hurt? The laughter, the jeers, the sense of worthlessness that had marred her youth? As she prepared for the day, Maria felt a weight pressing on her chest, a mixture of anticipation and fear. When she arrived at the office, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken tension. Alina and her team were already present, seated around the conference table, their expressions a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The dynamics had shifted again. Alina, once the confident leader, now seemed tentative, almost vulnerable. Maria stepped into the room, her posture upright and commanding, but inside, she was grappling with conflicting emotions. Thank you for coming back, she began, her voice steady. I've given our conversation some serious thought. Alina's eyes widened slightly, anticipation flickering in them. Maria continued, I appreciate the proposal you've laid out. While I am still wary, given our history, what Victor said yesterday resonated with me. Perhaps it is possible to find a way forward that benefits us all. She paused, gauging Alina's reaction, but the woman merely nodded, her expression earnest. But, Maria added, letting the word hang heavily in the air, we need to be clear about our expectations and the boundaries that must be established moving forward. I won't allow past grievances to seep into our professional dealings. This is a business partnership, and nothing more. Alina swallowed, visibly nervous but resolved. I agree. I know that I have a lot to make up for, and I take full responsibility for my actions in the past. I can't change what I did, but I can assure you that it won't happen again. There was a sincerity in Alina's voice that Maria hadn't expected. It felt different from the dismissive remarks of their youth. This time, Alina seemed genuinely willing to confront the repercussions of her actions, both as a person and a businesswoman. The rest of the meeting unfolded in a collaborative spirit that was surprising to all of them. They discussed financial projections, marketing strategies, and potential risks, but underlying it all was a newfound respect that had been absent in their previous encounters. Maria found herself laughing at Alina's jokes, the ice that had encased her heart slowly melting away, replaced by a cautious optimism. As they wrapped up, Maria felt a sense of liberation. It was as if she had reclaimed a part of herself that had long been buried beneath layers of hurt and resentment. Perhaps this partnership could indeed be a new beginning for both of them. Before we finalize anything, Maria said, gathering her materials, I want us to have a moment of honesty. Can we promise to communicate openly as we move forward? If anything arises that makes us uncomfortable, I want us to address it immediately. Can we agree on that? Alina nodded, and her colleagues echoed their assent. A sense of relief washed over Maria. The old dynamics were being dismantled, brick by brick. They were no longer bound by the cruel games of their youth. Instead, they stood on common ground as professionals, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, each deserving of respect. As the meeting came to an end, Alina lingered behind, waiting until everyone else had filed out. "Maria," she said, her voice softer now. "Thank you for giving me another chance. I know it won't be easy, but I hope we can truly move past this." Maria met her gaze, holding it steady. "You've already taken the first step by acknowledging the past. That means more than you know." They shared a moment of understanding, the kind that transcended words. There was still a long way to go, but the burdens of their history were beginning to lift. After Alina left the room, Maria sat in silence, her thoughts a swirl of reflections. She realized that this meeting had become about more than just business. It had transformed into a journey of healing, an opportunity to redefine not only her relationship with Alina but also her own sense of self. The shadows of the past were still there, whispering reminders of hurt, but they no longer held her captive. Instead, Maria felt empowered. She had faced her demons, not in an act of revenge, but in a quest for understanding. As she looked out at the bustling city from her office window, she saw not just a landscape of buildings, but a canvas of potential. The future lay before her, bright, expansive, and full of possibilities. She smiled to herself. The girl who had once been bullied in school had transformed into a powerful woman ready to embrace the challenges ahead. And in doing so, she had not only reclaimed her own narrative but had also opened a door for others to do the same. As she returned to her work, Maria felt a renewed sense of purpose. The story of her life was no longer defined by the hurt she had endured, but by the strength she had gained and the bridges she was now willing to build. It was time to rise, not just as a CEO, but as a beacon of resilience, ready to lead others into the light. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel and enjoy these other amazing stories.